met someone the other day. She had been in Japan for a few years, and she did this pilgrimage route where you go in a big circle and you visit 88 temples. It takes about 2 months if you're walking quickly. Some people take longer, and there are lots of people who do it, and they are pilgrims. It's been going on for at least 1,000 years, and the routes are still set. And she was really looking forward to it. Got a pilgrim hat, the traditional coat, and started going. And then she found to her disappointment. I mean, when you look at the pictures of it, they're all going through these nice Japanese forests, these tall pine trees. It seems wonderful. Suddenly you come upon a temple. But she said a lot of it actually was just on the highway. She's like walking on a highway. And she was thinking, what am I doing? What am I doing? And she said by halfway through, it didn't matter. She said it was the same. Being in the highway or being in the forest was the same. By the time I got halfway through it. I don't know what to make of that. There's something true there. And it really felt to me like meditation. Not that she's doing this meditation and suddenly, she just sees it's all like one. No. But we get into it hoping to be in a peaceful forest, wanting to get to that temple around the corner. But for most of the time, we're on the busy street. And that's not going to change. That's just not going to change. So I was wondering what this practice is good for. You should wonder. There's this famous exchange. Kasawi Roshi he had with his students, and they asked what is about meditation. And he said, Zazen, which is Zen meditation, it's good for absolutely nothing. It's good for nothing. And I'll read you his quote, because I don't want to misquote him, because then I'll probably make it into something. When someone asks me what Zazen is good for, I say that Zazen isn't good for anything at all. And then some say, well, in that case, maybe they should stop doing it. But what's running around satisfying your desires good for? What's gambling good for? What's dancing good for? What about winning or losing in anything is that good for? It's all good for absolutely nothing. That's why nothing is as sensible as sitting silently in Zazen. He says later, when you're practicing Zen or meditation, it has to be about yourself. Don't let Zen or your practice become a rumor that has nothing to do with you. I heard a rumor that I was meditating. It's like later in the day, you look back in the morning, like, did that really happen? Did I really sit this morning? Or is it just a rumor that I sat? It was a rumor that I practiced this morning. I told myself a rumor. I was gossiping about myself to myself, and I said I did something good. But because I was talking to myself about it, it actually disappeared. He later on answered somebody when he said, often people ask me how many years it takes in meditation before you start getting results. And he said meditation doesn't have any results. So that's the one hand. On the one hand, you have teachers like that who will say very clearly that your practice is not about getting anything out of it. What another Zen master, Suzuki Roshi, says, the gaining mind. Like, you go into it wanting to get something out of it, and you probably will get something out of it, but the truth of life is that gain and loss work together. So if you get something out of it, then probably later on you're going to lose that something. And then you'll start to really doubt your practice. Because like, I got some peace and calm out of it, and later on, because I gained it, well, what happens to gain? What goes up must come down. I lost it. So then, how do I make sense of this? And how do I continue? Sometimes another teacher talked about it, and it's a analogy I like to use in the past about brushing teeth. It's brushing teeth. It's like, in the beginning, you don't naturally brush your teeth. Your parents show you that you need to brush your teeth, and then you start to do it by yourself. But if you don't do it, you start to notice that you don't feel as good. And then if you don't brush for like a week, and then you start getting used to that not good feeling, and then you don't notice that it doesn't feel good anymore. It's just natural. So we start to take our natural state of minds, meaning our unbrushed state of minds, like after months or years, as the norm. And we forget what it's like to have clean teeth. So that's another analogy, which takes it away from the sense of, you want to create something really special. When really, it's about not settling with a very ignorant state of mind, which we've kind of accepted as our norm. We've accepted as a norm a really dirty mouth. Mental mouth, right? A dirty mental mouth. It's like, wow. And then, after a long time, the teeth example is good because there's plaque that builds up, and plaque is different from just normal bacteria that you can brush off. You can't even brush it off anymore with plaque. You got to go to a dentist and have them do that special cleaning, right? So you got to find a dentist and go to a clinic for the plaque on your mind. Generally, it's called a retreat. Which is it's like getting a dental treatment, because it's not pleasant. But after you leave, you put your tongue on your teeth, you feel like, wow, now I notice a difference. But I needed that serious, electric drill. Not the drill, whatever that brush is, The drill, I'm not going to push the analogy so far that we get into serious dental treatment. Fillings and cavities and stuff, and then extractions, root canals. I don't know spiritually what that would be. But I'm sure it exists. I'm not a dentist, so. But rather than thinking about what we should be getting, in this analogy, it's more what we should not be collecting and what we shouldn't have built up on our minds. And you have to notice that you've been collecting over the years a lot of mental plaque, right? So much so that you don't even notice that it's there. Until you get these flashes of wow, I'm normally behaving in these ways that are pretty negative. with a lot of attachment or fear, anxiety, desire, greed, anger, and even hatred. So on the one hand, you have someone like these Zen teachers who are talking like this. And I think the dental analogy, I like it because something does happen, but you shouldn't really notice it. Something does happen in your practice. Right? But it should start to be what you could consider the new normal, the healthy normal. I'm going to read a short quote from Suzuki Roshi, who approaches it this way. If you continue this simple practice every day, you will obtain some wonderful power. Before you attain it, it is some wonderful power. But after you attain it, it's not something special. It is just yourself, nothing special. Right? But this person that we think we can be, this full potential, is amazing, okay? The human potential is phenomenal. But when you're there, it's like, okay, this is what it means to be human. And you're not thinking of yourself as special. You're actually more equal and connected with everybody. There's nothing special. It's also an interesting thing about, say, if you were to ask very highly realized people, they don't feel like they're different from you. A great master is not going to say that he or she is like, they've risen above the crowd. But more so, they've joined the crowd. It's this need to be above and separate that is the source of a lot of negative emotions. But join the crowd not in the ignorance, but join the crowd in these qualities of compassion. I'm going to get to why I wanted to do a compassion sort of exercise shortly. So back to Suzuki Roshi. As the Chinese poem says, he quotes a Chinese poem, there is nothing special if you visit there. There is nothing special. However, Rosen is famous for its misty mountains, and Seiko is famous for its water. That's nothing special. Like, there's nothing special there if you visit. But here's Roy, okay? And I don't know if anyone else is there. Here's other people. Like, that's special. Like, there's nothing special because everyone's equal. But then Rosen is famous for its misty mountains and for its water. You see? We find this unity, this paradox of nothing special, like everyone equal, and totally unique and wonderful. So, he says that is Zazen. If you can, he also gives another real interesting analogy to parenthood. Anyone's a parent or thinking about a parent? I was touched by this. It's a kind of mystery that for people who have no experience of enlightenment is something wonderful. But if they attain it, it's nothing. Although it's nothing, it is not nothing. Do you understand? For some person, for the mother who has children, to have children is nothing. It's nothing special. It's just what she does. But if she loses her children, what will she feel? That is meditation. If you continue this practice, we don't know when you'll acquire power. But more and more, you will realize something. Not special, but not nothing. You may say universal nature, or Buddha nature, or enlightenment. You may call it by many names. But for the person who realizes it, it's nothing and something. Being a parent is probably the most, one of the most realized and sort of awesome events for human life. But so many people are parents, and after a little while, it's nothing special.
It's annoying.
Yeah, I wanted to say it's quite
it's annoying. but as Roshi says,
it's dukkha, quite
dukkha.
Yeah.
But God forbid you lose your child. You know.
If you don't lose your child, there's still dukkha.
There's a dukkha, but there's like, even the dukkha is special. You'll never have dukkha like that in any other way. Right?
Each got his own unique dukkha.
Each has, it's totally special and unique.
Yeah.
So to maintain that awareness of specialness on some level, like with everything, before we have it, we think it's really special. You ask a 16-year-old, what's it going to be like to drive? I'm dealing with that now. It's like, oh, that's the only thing I want to do is drive. And then after a couple of years of drive, it's like no big deal. Then you get in an accident. But before you have it, like enlightenment, you think it's the most wonderful thing. Then you have it, and it's like, got to deal with my kid again.
Well, some other teachers say it's the most wonderful thing.
Which? Driving or a child?
Enlightenment.
Enlightenment. It's not that it's not nothing. It's not that it's something. But what are we going to say about it? And is it so different from the most fantastic thing of, say, having a child and then getting upset at the child? Does enlightenment mean that you're not going to get upset at your child? So I was looking at the benefits of meditation. And, if you search online, you'll get very confused. Yeah. Don't learn meditation online. So I tried to. I went online hoping to learn meditation. And first I see 5 benefits of meditation, and then there's another one that says 7 benefits of meditation, went up to 12, and finally I found a site that had 72 benefits of meditation. Wow, 72! I spent a little while going down the list. I started to not feel so disillusioned. Some of them were pretty fantastic. They were divided into like physical, mental, and emotional, relational ones. And the physical ones were pretty good. All of these, see, there's a whole brain science going on where there are dozens of universities that are hooking meditators up to electrodes and measuring their, doing MRIs and measuring their brain activity, very closely. Yeah, one of the flaws of these, if you read, one of the things that makes me run in the opposite direction is whenever I read something that begins with research shows. That always makes me sort of move on. But when you do look at, you have to look at, how this research is done. And most of them, at least they even admit it, that like half of the experiments done dealing with meditation have serious methodological flaws, right? They just, number one, they take people who meditate for like 4 weeks or something, and then they measure it, but then they don't come back and measure it like 4 weeks later. How's the brain activity doing? So there's not a lot of comparison going on there. It's like, yeah, you had a great MRI showing after 4 to 8 weeks of meditation. Okay. Look, it's showing good potential, but to make all these really, what I will say is bombastic and really, hyperbolic statements about, reduction of Alzheimer's and reduction of, all sorts of diseases, stress. They even put in HIV there, all sorts of things going on. It sounds great, right? But if that's what's going to convince us, very soon after the 8-week course, we're not going to continue. Because you're not going to hook up to an MRI at home, right? And therefore, your proof is going to be missing. Yeah. And that brings me back to some of these teachers that are saying, they're talking to our expectations when they say it's good for nothing or it's nothing special. What they're trying to do is to get under some of our normal, ordinary way of approaching any type of self-improvement program. As scientists, we have a Western rational view that I'm going to do something and I want some evidence. It's evidence-based. But that's really important for research. But your practice is a kind of different endeavor. It's a different journey. It's a longitudinal study. And when we say longitudinal, we mean more than 8 weeks, or maybe even more than 8 years. And that kind of breaks the barriers of a lot of science, is to say, I'm going to have to be studying my life for half a century. Yeah, it's disturbing, and it sort of unsettles us to think that the Buddha was doing serious spiritual practices for 6 years before he had a breakthrough, and before that, many lifetimes were recorded there. Yeah? 8 weeks. 8 years. We have to think long, and the paramita that I mentioned last year, the great quality of patience, is really important. However, one of the interesting things that did come up in the research, if I'm going to that, across the board in a lot of the studies that were done, was on one hand there's like the mindfulness meditation and samadhi meditation and focus that is creating a certain state of mind. They're talking about reduction and malalia, something that produces hormones of chemistry and whatever that creates stress. Fine. But the compassion, the metta and karuna, the loving kindness, compassion meditations had just as strong an effect on one's own well-being as any other long meditation period that was studied. And that's why one of the things that we can access if we want to actually rediscover a special way to be. It's, a lot of what we're doing in our meditation is we're wanting to forget the self. Wanting to forget the self. What do I mean by forget the self? Dogen says, to study the Buddha way is to study the self. To study the self is to forget the self. To forget the self is to be realized by the myriad things. Now, and then he goes on and says, and to be realized by the myriad things is to experience your body and mind drop away, as well as the body and mind of all others drop away. That's too much for us to talk about. But the point here is that how this relates to our practice is when the experience of the self is when we are fixated on our thoughts and we are reacting in aggression, anger, attachment, delusion to the experience around us. That's self-centeredness, because I see you either as a threat or as a desire related to me. When I can observe without always filtering and reacting in terms of threat or desire, I'm not relating to you just in terms of my needs. And that's the essence of compassion. The essence of compassion and kindness, or loving kindness, is to relate to someone according to their needs, not my needs. So if you want to transcend the self, practice compassion. If you want to have immediate transcendence of self, and you can go through mindfulness meditation, you can recognize over and over again the patterns of the mind that is very self-centered, and your thoughts come up again and again. You don't need to feed them. But if you want a sort of a shortcut, and I'm not saying it's a shortcut to enlightenment, what I am saying is a shortcut through self, through selfishness, is to practice compassion and loving kindness. These are the Brahma Viharas. These are what are called the divine abodes. They're called that for a reason, because it transcends your small sense of self to what? To God? No. To the divine? No. To the other person who needs your help. That's the transcendence we're talking about. And that's what meditation will immediately help you with. And yeah, it's something and nothing at the same time. It's something for them and it's nothing for you. And when I say nothing, meaning it's like nothing for you to do, right? It's an easy, accessible practice. So I'll read one more short thing from Ajahn Chah, who does relate to, just so we feel that there is something we'll get out of this. As you continue to practice, understand that there is nothing to worry about. Establish this feeling of being relaxed and unworried securely in the mind. Once the mind is concentrated and one-pointed, no mind object will be able to disturb it, and you will be able to sit like this for as long as you want. You will be able to sustain concentration without any feelings of pain and discomfort. This is samadhi. Okay, one-pointed concentration that creates a sense of peace and presence. You are relaxed and at ease. You can enter and leave it without any problems. The mind and the heart are at ease. If you genuinely have samadhi like this, it means that sitting meditation and entering samadhi for just 30 minutes will enable you to remain cool and peaceful for many days afterwards. Experiencing the effects of samadhi like this for several days has a purifying effect on the mind. Whatever you experience will become then an object for contemplation. This is where the practice really begins. It's the fruit which arises as samadhi matures. So, what's useful here is that it's not good for nothing, okay? But this something is not you. It's not yours. It's not yours. Okay? It's not something you own. It's not something you possess. It's not something you control. Okay? It's not something that you can be proud of. That's why when they say it's nothing, it means it's nothing to you, but it's something for others. And that's why he says, then when you have this sort of focus, everything you meet is an object for your contemplation. Your anger, your fear, your happiness, your desires, your tea, your conversation, everything then is an object for your contemplation. Meaning mindfulness. You can be mindful of everything that arises because it's no longer all about you. So it's nothing to you, but it's something for the world. That's why when we say our meditation is good for nothing. Nothing if you want to own it. Something if you want to give it. That's the direction we need to go. And that's why compassion and mindfulness will inform each other and make them both something really special. So before we finish with another minute, just to be silent. Is there anything anyone would like to say? A question or comment about this, or about meditation or practice, or something you want to ask about?
What is contemplation?
Contemplation means to observe or think about deeply. In this context, contemplation means close observation. That's what it means, to contemplate something. In normal discussion, contemplation means to think deeply about something. Like, I want you to contemplate, what love does. But here we're talking about just to observe it in your mind. Yeah. So let's dedicate this evening. May we practice and live our lives in such a way that we can be of benefit to others and help to reduce suffering where we find it, in ourselves and in others. May suffering end, and may all others live at ease.